Let's talk about a firewood storage. In this video, I'm going to be building a cuter solution for firewood than stacking it against this building. So yesterday I was walking around my RV park called Pierce Stoke and I noticed this neatly stacked firewood we keep for guests. It's fine stacked nicely against the building there, but I think we could do something a little cuter. So I built a quick and simple solution that is definitely more eye-catching. If you're interested in building your own, I do have a set of plans for this one as well as many other things over on my website. Also, if you're ever in the hill country of Texas, and I would love for you to visit my RV park called Pierce Stoke. All right, first thing I did for this build was I cut all my material to length. And even though I'm gonna build the firewood storage on site at Pierce Stoke, I went ahead and utilized my shop and miter saw stand to cut all my boards first. I also personally like to paint the boards the day before building rather than waiting until the end of the build. The cutting goes really quick, especially utilizing the cut list I provide in the plans. But then I packed everything up in the back of my truck and hauled it out to Pierce Stoke. I'm gonna start with building the base, so I pulled all of the boards needed for that. I start with putting my two longest boards together so that I can mark one and then transfer it to both boards at the same time. Now, when I separate them, I have the location marks for both my studs. Since I have a framing nailer, that's what I'm using to join most things together on this. However, if you don't, then a drill and screw work just as great. Since the ground I'm building on isn't perfectly flat, I'm making sure to dress the studs off to the top of each board here. Next, I'll start building what I'm calling the ladders. I'll show you on my 3D model. Eventually, it's gonna look like this, but I'm gonna build the assemblies that look like these ladders first. I went ahead and pre-drilled some holes at the very top peaks, which will later allow me to join these peaks together of the triangles. You could absolutely use a jig, but I like to toenail it instead. The simple way to toenail is to go ahead and start your drill spinning at a 90-degree angle. Once it bites a little bit, then you can start tilting it and continue pushing it forward. You're gonna aim for going into half of the board. Next, I start attaching the studs that will span from the back to the front. Again, I'm making sure to dress these off flush to the top side of the board. And you can see that I'm using other boards to support the board I'm attaching. After I get the studs in, I can flip the entire assembly so that I can attach the other side the same way. But this time, I can work with gravity. And that is one ladder, or one half of one triangle. I repeated this with the two other 4 sections, just stacking them up as I completed them. Now let's see if this idea works. I grabbed 2 of the same height ladders and moved them to an opening so that I could split them apart and maneuver them where the angles at the top and the bottom looked mostly closed. Then I drove in screws in the toenails I drilled earlier to attach it. And this worked great. In fact, I thought it would be hard to hold things at a steady angle and toenail in at the same time, but it was easy. So if you want to build some, you could wait until this step to do the toenailing. Alrighty, one triangle down. I moved it out of the way and then repeated with the second set. Now this one will be a little wonky since it will end up connecting into the larger triangle rather than the base itself. So I focused on aligning the top of the peak flush with one another before securing things. Now let's move them into place on the base. I started with the largest triangle first, then brought in the second. It was here that...
Oh no, did I put that angle on backwards?
Yep, I realized my dyslexic brain struck again. I cut the angle at the bottom of the joining side wrong. It's annoying, but not a huge deal. I grabbed a circular saw and chopped off the smallest bit I could to correct the angle. Now it should work. Yep, just like that. Let me pause and thank this video sponsor, which is Dose. When you think about your health, you probably don't think about your liver, but you should. It is your largest internal organ and it influences so many things, including your energy level, which is very important to me. That's why I've been taking Dose and why you should too. Dose is a daily 2-ounce liquid shot that tastes like orange juice. Since it's a liquid, your body absorbs it more naturally than a powder or a capsule. Something really important to me, the ingredients are herbal, things like turmeric, which promotes the filtration process of your liver, dandelion, which aids digestion, and ginger, which supports energy production. These effects aren't just theories. Clinical studies have shown positive impact on liver function and enzyme levels. Right now, Dose is offering my audience a great offer, 35% off your first subscription. So if you want to promote your health and function of your liver, go to dosedaily.co/April. Again, big thank you to Dose for sponsoring this video. Next, I could attach the small triangle to the large one, again by toenailing in some screws. Note that I'm attaching things from the inside when I can so that it will be hidden later. Okay, perfect. Next, I could attach it to the base and put in the decking. For this, I'm going with 2x6s and started with the 3 short pieces that will be between the triangles. Then I can attach the decking. For simple stuff like this, I typically do things by eye instead of being fussy about exact spacing. I lay out my boards for the entire space, then use the base to make them straight. And then I use my eye to make the spacing equal. Again, since I have a nailer, I use it to pop in 2 nails per board. The next step is to attach the roofing panels. To keep the cost down, I am using fence pickets for this, and like the other material, I painted all my boards prior to cutting them up. It's not only easier to paint full boards, but it also means I can easily coat every bit of it. On each side, I start at the bottom and then overlap the next board by roughly half an inch. These boards are about 6 inches wide, and so to make spacing look equal, I'm aligning them at 5.5 inches and then pinning it into place. I start with the bottom, then tilt the top onto the framing and pin it twice up top as well. For attaching, I'm using a 15 gauge nailer with stainless steel nails. Stainless is going to be more expensive, but if you don't use it, they will eventually corrode outside, and it'll also leave those ugly black streaks on the wood. And if you don't have a 15 gauge nailer, you could use 18 gauge. Either way, on all of the sides, it always starts the same. You start at the bottom and work your way up to the top. Whenever I got to the top, I would either increase the overlap to make the top of the board come out flush to the top, or if it was dramatic, I would rip down a board to pop into place. Now keep in mind, I went with 2 triangles for mine, but you can easily take the concept and make this as big as you have space for. You could have 3, you could have 4, or you could have 2 completely individual ones. Another option I included in my plans, but I didn't put on the build itself, is a shelf for kindling. We don't offer any kindling at my RV park, so I left it off. However, I included it in the plans as an optional add-on. Also, if you're looking for a more space-efficient firewood rack, I also have one that I built years ago for my own personal use. It's not as cute, but it's very space-efficient and incredibly functional. I will say that this thing is heavy once it's fully built. I should have built it where it would eventually live, but no big deal. I asked the manager of Pure Stoke to give me a hand on dragging it and setting it into place. I had some bricks and pavers laying around, so I made a few level beds to keep the unit up off the ground and fully supported. Then Wayne was kind enough to help me load it down with the wood. It holds a surprisingly large amount. This is right at half a cord of wood. They tuck in nicely into the lines of the triangle and is easy to throw in or take out. Now, of course, this is not weather tight. There are a few places at the top where the roof panels meet where water will drip in, but it will be a definite upgrade from it being stacked and completely exposed. Again, you can check out my website if you would like a set of plans for this one or the other one. And if you're an RVer that ever wants to visit Texas, then I would love to see you at Pure Stoke. This build actually only took me roughly 4 hours, but I split it up over 2 days because when I'm out at my RV park, I get interrupted chatting with guests and saying hello to everybody, and then people stop in, and of course they see me filming, they're like, what are you doing? Or they're a fan of mine and saying, can we watch, can we help? And so this build actually, I spanned it over 2 days, but it's a very, very simple build that you can knock out in roughly 4 to 6 hours if you're needing a firewood storage. Either way, I hope that you find inspiration from this, and I would love to hear a comment if you end up building one of your own. I'll see you on my next build, guys.